More than 50% of black people surveyed in Italy reported discrimination, and that number should make any black American thinking about leaving the US slow down for a second. A lot of people are tired of America, from rent eating the paycheck to healthcare bills, messy politics, police tension, job stress, and the feeling that peace always costs extra. Moving abroad can start sounding like a real chance to breathe without every bill, headline, or police siren feeling personal. But leaving America doesn't mean racism disappears at the airport. In some countries, black travelers and expats still deal with erased history, housing rejection, club bans, police checks, public staring, online mockery, and jokes that feel less funny when you're the target. You might be welcomed as a tourist, then questioned the moment you try to live like a normal person. So today we're counting down the top 10 countries black travelers and expats should be careful with. Which country surprised you the most, and where do you think black travelers should be extra careful? Follow the channel for more videos like this. Number 10, Argentina. Argentina's problem starts with a national story that leaves black people almost completely out of the picture. For decades, the country has leaned hard into its European image, while its African roots are treated like something that quietly vanished. That is why the 2010 national census number hit so hard. Only about 0.4% of the population identified as Afro-descendant. That number does not just describe who lives there now. It also shows what kind of history the country has chosen to remember. In the 18th century, black people made up about 1/3 of Buenos Aires. Today, many travelers hear a very different national myth, the one that says Argentines came from European boats. For a black traveler, that myth is not just old history. It can show up in the way people stare, ask where you are really from, or treat blackness like something foreign to the country. A report from Argentina's National Anti-Discrimination Agency, INADI, showed that more than 60% of locals admitted to holding prejudiced views. Then in July 2024, the quiet part became very loud. After Argentina won the Copa America, Enzo Fernandez live-streamed himself and other players singing a racist chant about black players on the French national team. The line about French players being from Angola was not just soccer trash talk. It repeated the same old idea that black people can represent a country and still be treated like they do not truly belong to it. When Argentina's vice president defended the chant as the truth instead of racism, the message became even clearer. This is not only about one ugly song, it is about a country where blackness is often treated as an outside problem, even when the history says otherwise. So the daily experience can feel strange in a way that is hard to explain. People may ask where you are really from. They may slow down their speech like your skin color came with a language problem. If you are a black woman, some people may jump straight to assumptions about immigration status before they ever consider that you are a tourist, a student, a professional, or just someone living your life. Argentina can still be beautiful, but beauty does not erase the feeling of being treated like proof that the national story left something out. Number 9, Spain. Spain's black story goes back centuries through slavery, empire, Andalusia, the Canary Islands, Equatorial Guinea, migration from Africa, and Afro-Latin communities, even though the country still doesn't count race in a clean official category. Researchers have estimated Spain's African and Afro-descendant population at roughly 844,000 to 1.24 million people, depending on how ancestry, migration, and Spanish-born Afro-descendants are counted. You see that presence in ordinary places first. Hair shops, African food stores, churches, street vendors, football fields, family networks, and neighborhoods where black life isn't rare at all. Madrid can call you amigo at night and feel completely different the next morning when you need an apartment, a job interview, or a police officer to see you as a resident instead of a problem. A 2022 housing discrimination report in Madrid found that many real estate agencies accepted landlord requests excluding immigrants or black people, so a black renter can have the deposit ready and still lose the apartment before seeing the kitchen. The rejection usually comes quietly, through an unanswered message, a sudden already rented, or an agent who sounded friendly until the viewing got real. After a few calls like that, you stop hearing amigo the same way. Vinicius Jr. became the public face of something black people in Spain had already felt in smaller rooms. In January 2023, an effigy of him was hung from a bridge in Madrid, and in May 2023, fans at Mestalla shouted "mono," meaning monkey, at him during a match. When Vinicius reacted with pain and anger, part of the conversation shifted toward his behavior, as if the real problem was a black man refusing to absorb the abuse politely. A black tourist may never play in a stadium, but the same pattern can show up in a department store when security follows too closely, or on Gran Via when a random paperwork check doesn't feel random at all. Spain can feel warm at dinner, then cold the next morning when the same friendliness doesn't help you get an apartment, avoid a police stop, or walk through a store without someone shadowing you. Number 8. Russia. Russia's black population is small, but black presence there has a real history through African students, Soviet-era education programs, anti-colonial ties, diplomats, athletes, workers, and families who built lives in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and university cities. With that much Soviet-era connection to Africa, you'd expect a black student in Moscow to feel like part of an old relationship, not like someone the street still hasn't learned how to see. Black life in Russia often starts with route planning, because safety can depend on which metro exit you choose, which street you avoid after dark, and how quickly you read a group of men before they read you. The Sova Center has tracked racist violence in Russia for years, with victims often targeted because they looked non-Slavic. For a black student, cheaper tuition doesn't cancel the feeling of walking home with tight shoulders because somebody behind you laughed too loudly. Discomfort becomes safety planning when people start choosing streets based on who might be waiting there. After a few months, checking the sidewalk before turning the corner stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling like something your body does automatically. Football showed the same hostility in a louder room. In 2012, a major Zenit St. Petersburg fan group demanded that the club avoid signing black players to protect its identity. Roberto Carlos had a banana thrown at him in Russia in 2011, and Malcolm's arrival at Zenit in 2019 was met with racist reactions around fan banners and public anger. Angry fans didn't keep those moments private. The racism came out in banners, manifestos, chants, and stadium culture. Away from stadiums, apartment and job listings saying Slavs only can turn a normal search into a reminder that the country already sorted you before meeting you. You sit on a packed metro watching people choose to stand, and after a while the empty seat beside you feels louder than the crowd. Russia pushes many black residents into constant watchfulness, where studying, working, dating, shopping, or riding the train also means measuring how much danger your skin might attract. Number 7. China. China's black population is hard to count because the country doesn't track black identity like many Western censuses do, but Guangzhou became one of the clearest centers of African life through trade, wholesale markets, restaurants, churches, student networks, and business routes between China and the continent. Before the pandemic, estimates often placed Guangzhou's African community in the tens of thousands when long-term residents, traders, students, and temporary business travelers were included. Many black people in Guangzhou had leases, suppliers, children, routines, debt, plans, and families depending on them, so the city wasn't some quick stop with hotel keys and shopping bags. April 2020 showed how quickly those routines could be stripped away. During the pandemic, black residents in Guangzhou reported being evicted, refused hotels, forced into extra testing or quarantine, and treated like public health threats, even when their actual health status didn't justify it. A McDonald's branch in Guangzhou displayed a sign saying black people weren't allowed to enter, and African diplomats had to protest because the discrimination had become too public to bury. The pandemic gave people an excuse to act on a bias that was already there. Chinese media had already told black people what place they were given in the national imagination. Chobi wasn't a private joke at a dinner table. The 2016 detergent ad showed a black man being shoved into a washing machine and turned into a light-skinned Asian man. CCTV put blackface and a monkey gag in front of a massive national audience during the 2018 Spring Festival Gala. A black person in China can be a teacher, trader, student, parent, or business owner and still get reduced to skin spectacle in someone else's phone camera. Then the same idea follows you into normal errands, where strangers film your face like the sidewalk turned into a zoo window. A mother pulling her child away in an elevator can stay in your head longer than a business deal. China may respect your money, passport, business contacts, or English, while respect for your full personhood feels much less reliable. Number 6. South Korea. South Korea's black community is small compared with places like France, Brazil, or the United States, with Africans, African Americans, English teachers, students, entertainers, workers, mixed families, and long-term residents making up a visible but limited part of the foreign population. Korean statistics have counted around 20,000 African residents in recent years, while broader black identity remains harder to measure because the country doesn't collect race the way the US does. When the community is small, one black person in a class, office, club line, or subway car can become everybody's first awkward experiment. K-pop and Korean youth culture have borrowed heavily from black music, hip-hop dance, streetwear, slang, and performance style, so black culture can be everywhere even when black people aren't. The National Human Rights Commission of Korea found in a 2020 survey that 68.4% of migrants agreed racial discrimination exists in Korean society. Korea can move fast with music, phones, beauty trends, and entertainment, then move painfully slowly when someone asks for basic protection from discrimination. South Korea has debated broad anti-discrimination protections for years, without passing a full national law, leaving many foreigners feeling exposed when they're insulted, blocked, rejected, or mocked. Sam O'Kier found out how expensive one honest comment could become in Korea after Korean students used blackface to imitate a meme in 2020. O'Kier criticized it and faced a public backlash that pushed him out of much of his entertainment career. The country could borrow black style for music videos, comedy, fashion, and coolness, yet a black man explaining why blackface hurts became the problem. It's how one can teach the same lesson in a few seconds. A black person can dress well, show up ready to spend money, and still hear Koreans only at the door while white foreigners walk in behind them. Standing at that door doesn't only ruin the night, it shows you which foreigners are treated like fun guests and which ones are treated like a problem. South Korea can feel futuristic on the train, on the phone, and on the screen, while the social rules around blackness still feel painfully old. Number 5. Japan. Japan's black population is small, with African nationals, African Americans, black Japanese citizens, mixed-race families, military-connected residents, athletes, teachers, artists, and students living inside a society that still often imagines itself as nearly uniform. Recent reports have placed African nationals in Japan at only tens of thousands inside a foreign population of several million, so black people can be present and still get treated like a surprise. They're real people with homes, jobs, kids, bills, and routines, even when Japan's public image still acts like black life is an exception. A crowded Tokyo train can leave the seat beside you empty for stop after stop, and after a while, the empty seat starts doing the talking for everyone. Nobody says, "Don't sit here," but after 20 minutes of people standing beside an open seat, the point lands anyway. Housing brings the same feeling with better manners. A Ministry of Justice survey found that around 40% of foreign residents who looked for housing had been rejected because they were foreign. For black residents, the rejection can come with a bow, an apology, and a soft voice, which makes the exclusion harder to confront because nobody in the room wants to look rude while being unfair. An agent may say the owner is worried, the building has rules, or the room is suddenly unavailable, then you still leave without the apartment. It's hard to argue with a person who bows while denying you, because the rudeness is hidden under perfect manners. Police profiling adds a sharper edge to that quiet distance. In December 2021, the US Embassy in Tokyo warned about suspected racial profiling after reports of foreigners being stopped and searched by Japanese police. For black people, dreadlocks, skin tone, body size, or simply being visibly foreign can turn a normal walk into a moment where paperwork suddenly matters. Japan may feel safe at midnight near a train station, then feel completely different when police stop you because your hair, skin, or face made you stand out. The pain gets harder to explain because it often arrives politely enough to make you wonder whether you're allowed to be angry. Number 4. France. France has one of Europe's largest black populations, with millions of people connected to the Caribbean, West Africa, Central Africa, the Indian Ocean, and generations of families born inside France. French sports, music, food, neighborhoods, literature, politics, and military history all carry black presence, even though the country refuses to count race in the census. The colorblind model sounds clean when officials say everyone is simply French. A black man stopped by police for the 3rd time in a month doesn't get to enjoy that theory for very long. France's rights defender reported in 2017 that young men perceived as black or Arab were far more likely to face identity checks, with the often cited figure reaching 20 times more likely than others. A police check doesn't need to become violent to change how someone moves through a city. People start choosing routes, checking pockets for ID before leaving home, and warning younger brothers not to argue, even when the stop feels insulting. Michelle Zecler's case put the fear on camera. On November 21st, 2020, the black music producer was beaten by police inside his Paris studio after an encounter that began over a face mask, and the footage showed racial slurs and repeated blows with truncheons. President Emmanuel Macron called the footage shameful for France. Though black viewers didn't watch it like some rare French accident, many saw a fear their families had already learned to manage. Work and shopping carry their own pressure. An African-sounding name can weaken a resume before the interview stage, and a black customer on the Champs-Elysees can spend real money while security follows like suspicion comes with the receipt. Paris may be called the city of light, but a black shopper can still feel security following so closely that the whole store starts feeling smaller. France tells people race shouldn't matter, then keeps giving black people reasons to keep their documents ready, their tone calm, and their guard up. The tiring part is hearing "we don't see race" from a country where your name, ID, neighborhood, and skin can change how the day goes. Number 3. Sweden. Sweden's black population includes people with roots in Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Gambia, Nigeria, Ghana, the Caribbean, the United States, and mixed Swedish families, although the country doesn't count race through a simple official category. Some came as refugees, some came for school or work, some were born there, and plenty of black kids grow up Swedish while still getting asked where they're really from. Sweden knows how to talk about fairness in meetings, schools, campaigns, and workplace posters. The problem begins when the words sound better than the life people are actually living. The EU Fundamental Rights Agency has reported widespread discrimination and harassment against people of African descent in Europe, with Sweden standing out in several findings on anti-black harassment. Sweden's own crime prevention authorities have also identified Afrophobia as a major hate crime motive, with more than 1,000 cases reported yearly in some summaries. People may know the right words at work, say diversity with confidence, and still treat a non-Nordic name as a reason to move a resume to the bottom. The 2012 cake scandal showed how ugly that blind spot could become in elite spaces. At Stockholm's Museum of Modern Art, Sweden's culture minister cut into a cake made as a racist blackface caricature of an African woman while the room laughed and the artist screamed from under the table. Nobody needed to be wearing a street gang jacket for the moment to feel racist. The room was educated, artistic, polished, and still comfortable turning black pain into entertainment. A coworker may invite you to fika, speak warmly about inclusion, and then a promotion quietly goes to someone who fits the room more easily. The hard part in Sweden is that rejection can come from people who sound calm, friendly, and fully trained in the vocabulary of inclusion. The door still closes even when the person closing it knows all the right words. Number 2, Brazil. Brazil has the largest black population outside Africa when black and brown Brazilians are counted together, and the 2022 census counted about 92.1 million brown Brazilians and 20.6 million black Brazilians. Together, those groups make up more than half the country, so blackness in Brazil isn't sitting on the edge of the culture. Brazilian food, religion, samba, capoeira, carnival, labor, street life, and language all carry African roots. Brazil was the last country in the Americas to abolish slavery, ending it in 1888. After 1888, freedom didn't come with land, savings, safe policing, or a fair shot at wealth. You can still see the old damage in who owns property, who gets stopped by police, who plays the rich family on TV, and who gets followed in the mall. IBGE data shows black and brown Brazilians remain heavily represented among the poor. Police violence falls especially hard on black communities, with recent monitoring showing black people making up a vast majority of police killing victims in data where race is recorded. João Alberto Silveira Freitas became a national wound in November 2020 when 2 white security guards beat him to death in a Carrefour parking lot in Porto Alegre on the night before Black Consciousness Day. Video of him struggling for air sparked protests because the scene crushed Brazil's old myth of racial democracy. Black Brazilians didn't need a national myth. They needed security guards, police, employers, and TV producers to treat black life differently. The myth doesn't help much when security follows you through a high-end mall, police enter black neighborhoods like hostile territory, and TV still gives wealth and romance mostly to white faces. Brazil can celebrate black culture loudly and still make black people fight for safety quietly. The pain comes from seeing blackness loved as rhythm, flavor, and performance, then feared when it walks into the wrong store. Number 1, Italy. African and Afro-descendant communities are visible in Rome, Milan, Turin, Bologna, Naples, Palermo, smaller towns and agricultural regions where migrant labor keeps food moving. Black Italy includes Nigerian street vendors, Senegalese workers, Eritrean and Somali families, Ghanaian communities, Black Italians born in the country, students, athletes, artists, caregivers, farm workers, and children who speak Italian better than any other language. The EU Fundamental Rights Agency reported high discrimination levels among people of African descent in Italy, with more than half reporting discrimination in recent survey data. It can cost someone a job, a room, a fair police check, or the simple comfort of sitting in a cafe without being stared down. Alika Ogerchukwu's killing showed the most brutal version of that exposure. On July 29, 2022, the disabled Nigerian street vendor was attacked in Civitanova Marche, beaten with his own crutch, pinned down, and choked to death in broad daylight. Bystanders filmed instead of stepping in. The attacker had his hands on Alika, but the people filming helped turn those minutes into something even colder. For black viewers, the filming hurt because it showed how long a crowd could watch a black man die before anyone decided he was worth saving. Labor exploitation adds another layer through the caporalato system, where many African migrant workers have been trapped in brutal farm work, including tomato picking under extreme heat for very little money. Calling it poverty makes it sound too clean because caporalato runs on fear, papers, debt, isolation, and workers who can't easily walk away. A country can eat the food and ignore the hands that picked it. A black traveler with money still may not escape suspicion because a Milan cafe, a luxury shop, or a high-speed train can turn into another place where your passport, wallet, and clothes don't fully protect you from being judged first. A random check that somehow lands on the darkest person in the carriage doesn't feel random to the person handing over the document. Italy sits at number 1 because the pressure can come from several directions at once: public indifference, migrant exploitation, suspicion in daily spaces, and a national habit of treating black pain as something other people can watch. Black travelers don't all experience these countries the same way, but the pattern is hard to ignore. History gets erased, jokes get excused, housing gets denied, police checks feel too familiar, and everyday respect can depend on the room you walk into. If this video helped you see the issue with more context, thanks for watching. Which country surprised you the most, and which one do you think should have been on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your experience may help someone else travel smarter. Subscribe for more honest breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next video.